Lord, help me to only do your will. Like, help me to submit myself to your way. Because life is out here lifing. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Mind and Devotion. My name is Esther Sawa. And as per usual, I have a quick midweek thought for you today, which is, what is the limit of your obedience to God? As in, will you still obey Him even when it hurts? The focus of this channel is to restore and maintain an intimate relationship with God. It's a journey to restore and maintain an intimate relationship with God. And I know that within my personal journey, one thing I've been slowly learning is that there's no intimacy without obedience. As long as God is concerned, like there's no intimacy with God without obedience. But then there's no obedience without sacrifice, right? So the depth of your intimacy with God correlates to the extent of sacrifices you are willing to adhere to in order to fulfill His will. And oftentimes in our zeal, we so easily say things like, Lord, have your way in me, let your will be done, let your kingdom come. We say these things with so much ease because we are zealous and just passionate about the things of God. But we have to understand that zeal is fleeting. And because zeal is fleeting, we need to actually sit down and count the cost of pursuing an intimate relationship with God. Count the cost of actually obeying His every word. And one of the ways to count the cost is to look at the lives or study the lives of individuals in scriptures that walked with God, and see the sacrifices that they had to make in order to obey Him, in order to please Him, and then pray for grace. Once you see these sacrifices and you are touched by their sacrifices, I don't even have to tell you to pray. You yourself will pray for grace. You yourself will begin to change the tunes of some of the songs that you are singing. You would not just be saying, God, have your way in me. You'll be saying, God, please help me to be malleable enough when you want to have your way in me. Like, you will change, you will modify a lot of these lyrics. Now I want us to consider an account from Ezekiel 24 verses 15 to 18, and it reads, Then this message came to me from the Lord, Son of man, with one blow I will take away your dearest treasure. Yet you must not show any sorrow at her death. Do not weep. Let there be no tears. Groan silently, but let there be no wailing at her grave. Do not uncover your head or take off your sandals. Do not perform the usual rituals of mourning or accept any food brought to you by consoling friends. So I proclaimed this to the people the next morning, and in the evening my wife died. The next morning I did everything I had been told to do. So in this account, basically God was informing the prophet Ezekiel that his wife is going to die the next day. And when his wife died, He told him not to cry. Like, He did not want him to mourn the death of his wife. He was not even permitted to shed a tear. And mind you, God made it plain that this is your dearest treasure. So like, He knows that you love this woman, but her life will be required of her the next day, and I expect you to not cry. And Ezekiel also woke up the next day, proclaimed the death of his wife, and adhered to everything that God told him to not do. And he did not mourn at all, even though it hurts. And I know that, if it was nowadays, people will find ways to kind of make God's command more convenient, more relatable, more palatable, in that we will say things like, oh no, that's very harsh. Like, even Jesus cried. There's no reason why you shouldn't cry. That's not of the Lord, etc., etc., right? But He chose to obey God even when it hurts. And I tell you, because of his sacrifice and the pain that he endured, he is much closer to the heart of God than majority of us who choose to obey him only when it's convenient. See, Jesus said something sobering in Luke 14. He said that if you want to be my disciple, if you want to follow me, if you want to have any relationship with me, you have to hate your parents, hate your spouse, hate your children, and hate even yourself. And like I said, we have a way of presenting certain messages in scripture in such a way that it will soften the blow, or it will be much easier to swallow. But in actuality, in this journey towards intimacy and oneness with God, the only person that you are permitted to fall madly in love with, deeply in love with, is God. Because that's the only way you will obey the words that he says. That's the only way you will adhere to the sacrifices needed to obey him, especially when it hurts.